The sun had barely begun to rise over the wide, open plains when the morning fog started to lift, revealing a lonely figure walking along the dusty trail. Her name was Clara May, a woman who carried her whole life in one worn-out bag and a heart that had forgotten what kindness felt like. The wind tugged at her brown shawl, and the dust clung to her skirt as if the earth itself didn't want to let her go. She wasn't running from anyone, no, she was running from the mirror, from the cruel words of a world that never saw her as enough. Her boots were torn, her hands rough from work, and her eyes, oh, those eyes told a story few had the patience to hear. As the trail curved toward a wooden fence, the sound of a horse echoed in the distance. A man rode toward her, tall in the saddle, hat low over his eyes, the kind of cowboy you'd expect to see in the old tales told by firelight. He slowed down when he saw her. "Ma'am, you lost?" His voice was deep but gentle, the kind that could calm a spooked horse. Clara hesitated. "No, sir. Just walking. Don't reckon I got anywhere left to be." The cowboy looked at her for a long moment before saying softly, "Well, that's a mighty long way to go if you ain't got nowhere to be." She gave a faint smile, the first in days, and said, "Guess I'm just looking for someplace that doesn't mind having me." He nodded toward his ranch in the distance. "You'll find supper and a roof there if you don't mind helpin' with a few chores." Clara blinked, uncertain. "You don't even know me." The cowboy smiled, tipping his hat. "Reckon you don't know me neither." "Seems fair enough." And so, that's how it began. Channel intro voice, soft, cinematic tone. Welcome to Frontier Echoes, where every story whispers of the Old West, of love, loss, and redemption beneath endless skies. Clara followed the cowboy to his ranch, a quiet piece of land framed by golden fields and a creek that hummed with life. It wasn't grand, but it was peaceful, the kind of place that made you forget what you'd lost. The cowboy's name was Eli Turner. Folks around town knew him as a man of few words and fewer friends. He worked hard, talked little, and carried the kind of sadness only the prairie understood. When Clara arrived, Eli didn't ask about her past. He didn't ask what she was running from or who had hurt her. He just showed her where the feed was kept, where to fetch water, and where she could sleep, in the small cabin behind the barn. For the first few days, they hardly spoke. Clara worked from dawn till dusk, feeding the animals, patching fences, and cooking simple meals. Eli would ride out early and return at sundown, tired but quiet, always offering a respectful nod before heading to his own cabin. There was no tension between them, just a quiet understanding, like two souls who'd seen enough of life to appreciate silence. But one evening, something shifted. The rain had started without warning, sharp, cold, relentless. Clara had just finished gathering the laundry when she slipped in the mud and tore her dress. She sat there in the rain, holding the ripped fabric, her face hidden beneath the wet strands of her hair. Eli came running from the barn, his hat dripping with rain. "You all right, Miss Clara?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "It's just a dress. Not that it matters. Ain't like I got much to tear." Eli offered his hand to help her up, but she didn't take it. Instead, she whispered, more to herself than to him, "I'm not pretty, Mr. Turner. Folks never said I was. Guess they weren't wrong." For a long moment, he didn't answer. The rain beat down harder, thunder rolling across the plains like the sound of an angry god. Then, softly, Eli said something she'd never forget. "That's fine, Miss Clara. I ain't lookin' for pretty. I need honest, not fancy." Her eyes lifted, filled with disbelief. "Honest?" Eli nodded. "Pretty fades. Fancy don't last. But honesty, that's a thing you can ride through a storm with." She didn't say anything. The tears on her cheeks mixed with the rain, and for the first time in years, she felt seen, not judged, not compared, just seen. Days turned into weeks, and something gentle began to grow between them. It wasn't loud or rushed. It was quiet, like the sound of rain on a tin roof or the warmth of coffee before sunrise. Eli would often sit by the porch after supper, carving small wooden figures while Clara hummed old songs her mother used to sing. They rarely talked about their pasts, but every shared silence told more than words could. Sometimes, Clara caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, not with desire, but with the calm curiosity of a man rediscovering what peace looked like. And sometimes, when Eli rode into town, he'd bring back small things, a spool of thread, a tin of sugar, once even a book with the cover half torn. He'd leave them by her door without a note. Clara pretended not to notice, but she always smiled when she found them. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Eli found Clara sitting by the fence, holding the small wooden horse he'd carved for her. "Didn't think you'd like it much," he said, leaning on the post. Clara smiled faintly. "It ain't fancy, but it's real. That's what makes it beautiful." Eli's eyes softened. "You know, that's what I thought about you too." She looked away, her heart thudding. "You don't have to say that." He shook his head slowly. "Ain't sayin' it because I have to. Sayin' it because it's true." The silence stretched between them, not awkward, just full of meaning. But happiness, in the West, never came easy. One cold morning, a stranger rode into the ranch, tall, clean-shaven, and wearing a city coat that didn't belong in the dust. He looked at Clara and smiled in a way that made Eli's jaw tighten. "Clara May," the man said, stepping closer. "I'll be damned. It is you." Eli looked between them. "You know this man?" Clara's hands shook as she nodded. "Used to. Long time ago." The man laughed. "Used to? You disappeared from Kansas without a word, left me to explain to everyone why my fiancé ran off." Eli's eyes darkened. "Fiancé?" Clara looked down, ashamed. "It was years ago, Eli. I was supposed to marry him, but I couldn't. He didn't love me, just the idea of me." The man sneered. "You always were dramatic. Thought running away would make you mysterious? All it did was make you a nobody." Eli stepped forward, his voice calm but sharp. "That's enough." The stranger turned, smirking. "And who are you? Her savior?" Eli's hand rested on his belt, not near the gun, but close enough. "Just a man who knows the worth of what you threw away." The stranger scoffed and left, muttering something about fools and dirt roads. Clara watched him disappear down the trail, her heart heavy. "I'm sorry, Eli. You didn't deserve that." He turned to her, eyes steady. "I didn't mind. But you don't owe me apologies for another man's blindness." She blinked, tears gathering. "He called me a nobody." Eli smiled gently. "Then he must have been looking with the wrong eyes." That night, Clara cried quietly in her cabin. Not from sadness, but from the strange peace of knowing someone finally saw her for who she was, not what she looked like. And as the days passed, the air between them changed. The loneliness that once filled the ranch was replaced with laughter, the sound of two people finding healing in each other's presence. Eli began teaching her how to ride. At first, she was terrified, clutching the saddle, trembling every time the horse trotted. But Eli was patient, walking beside her, holding the reins gently. "You're doing fine," he'd say. "The trick is to trust your balance, and yourself." One afternoon, as they rode along the ridge, Clara looked over the endless land below and whispered, "I used to think beauty meant being seen by others." Eli turned to her. "And now?" She smiled softly. "Now I think it's about being known by the right one." He nodded, tipping his hat. "Reckon that's the kind of beauty that don't fade." Winter came quietly, bringing frost to the windows and a hush to the plains. The ranch felt smaller then, warmer. Clara would cook while Eli fixed the firewood, and in the evenings, they'd sit close, trading small stories of the lives they'd lived before fate crossed their paths. One evening, as snow began to fall, Eli reached across the table and took her hand. "Clara," he said softly, "you ever think about staying? Not just through winter, but for good?" Her breath caught. "You mean, here?" He smiled. "Here. With me. The ranch could use another steady hand. And I could use someone who makes the place feel like home." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. "I ain't fancy, Eli," she whispered. "Never will be." He squeezed her hand, his eyes kind. "Good. I told you, I don't need fancy. I just need honest." Spring came again, and with it, wildflowers bloomed across the fields. The ranch looked alive, like it was breathing after a long sleep. One morning, Clara stepped outside with a basket of fresh bread. She saw Eli by the fence, fixing a loose rail. He looked up, smiling that quiet smile of his. "Morning, Mrs. Turner," he said. She laughed, still not used to the sound of it. "Morning, Mr. Turner." The wind carried their laughter across the open land, soft, genuine, and real. They didn't have much, no riches, no grand house, no fine clothes. But they had something most people spent lifetimes searching for: peace, trust, and a love that didn't need to be perfect to be true. And in the heart of the Old West, under skies vast and endless, two souls who thought they'd been forgotten found their forever, not in beauty, but in honesty. Closing narration, gentle, heartfelt tone. Sometimes, life doesn't give you the prettiest story. But if you're lucky, it gives you an honest one. Because out here, where the wind carries memories and the stars keep secrets, the truest kind of love isn't fancy, it's faithful. Channel outro, soft western guitar fades in. You've been listening to Frontier Echoes, stories of the untamed West, where every heart carries a tale. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Until next time, keep your spirit wild, and your heart honest.